Hello guys, welcome to our new video. Today we are going to talk about Christodoulides and Erhürman's meeting, which they agreed on four titles. And yeah, let's begin to them one by one. We have our guests, who is Selçuk and Tim as well, and we have Erdem and me. So, right. So one of the titles that they agreed on, civil society's dialogue. What do we think about that? What does it imply? What do you guys expect it to be, the civil society dialogue? Like what more? Do you guys think it's something like what Halef argued? Do you think it's finally happening? Like the journalists from both sides are coming together, talking or something?
I mean, most likely it is just a superficial explanation of, oh, we already have a national technical committee on, not national, sorry, technical committee on youth. We agreed that it's important. And they probably just re-emphasized the importance of existing grassroots movements rather than I don't think I don't read that there's anything new here. I wonder what you guys think, but on this first point.
I mean, they've been saying that they're going to bring in civil society for a while. If you go back to like maybe even last year, you'll see that was one of the kicked about confidence building measures. It's just disappointing. They delivered predictably little, and they had ages to work out how to bring civil society into the Cyprus problem. They didn't do it. And then the other three confidence building measures, the Halloumi and the PGO stuff, they should be doing that outside of the Cyprus problem anyway. So that doesn't really count as a confidence building measure. And then you had the pilgrimages, right, which they've agreed to start coordinating on again. But if you hear about the backstory to that, last year, one group of pilgrims from the north they organized a trip to Hala Sultan Tekke, and that was cancelled by the southern authorities for whatever reason. And recently in the north, they cancelled an Armenian pilgrimage. So the fact that they're saying, oh, pilgrimages will start up again, pilgrimages were happening anyway. I mean, 2025, I think, Guterres report said that 1,000 people crossed the line to go on religious pilgrimages. So these four confidence building measures, they're just really stuff that should have been done outside of the Cyprus problem. They're stuff that you can meet up in Nicosia and sort out any day of the week. I don't understand why, these UN brokered meetings are being used for essentially quite frivolous agreements.
Yeah, I mean, like when you think about it, especially at those pilgrimages, I mean that reaction when Tufan Erhürman, I think it was when he um basically did a tit for tat reaction for what happened last year to people. I think it was only not only to Hala Sultan, but I think there was something else happening last year to Bayraktar Mosque in the Old Town. And again, that was cancelled as well. So in this new recent one, which was I think to Surtmagar Monastery in Kyrenia, they cancelled it on the Armenian community this time. And this is just such a unnecessary tit for tat response. It just it does nothing to yeah, it does absolutely nothing. On the halloumi front though, I think that's a bit more tricky because I know that in the north there is vastly uh, it is lacking compared to the south infrastructure on halloumi's production from what I know. If Doruk was here, he probably would have explained a lot better. But I think that maybe is not as simple as just agreeing, the pilgrimages to happen or the civil dialogue to civil society dialogue to foster. But it's just disappointing, I would say. I think it's yeah. I just find all these 4 points a bit lackluster, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I get what you guys mean. I also was expecting to like hear much more from this dialogue they had. They met alone in the General Secretary's office, and um, when they're alone, you would expect maybe more things would come true. Maybe they finally realize um, these problems. They shouldn't linger too much on them. I mean, the stuff that was discussed, the pilgrimage stuff was, I mean, shouldn't even be in question. I mean, Republic of Turkey has like so many churches, and I'm pretty sure like many Greek Orthodox religious people like goes to Turkey and visits those churches, and those churches have people working in them, and they like live their general life, even in the Republic of Turkey, even in the state Turkey is. So I don't know why we are having these problems in the last year or so. And for the civil society stuff, I was actually interested in that one. I don't know. Maybe I interpreted the stuff wrong, but they said there will be like a support group of some sort in the Cyprus problem. Maybe if you keep the general public more in touch with the current state of the Cyprus problem, people would start discussing it more at least. Because right now, like, I don't know about you guys, but I don't know too many people that keeps the Cyprus problem in their radar for the last like 5 years. So it was more on people's radar during, I think, Akıncı era. And since and when Tatar got elected, we had like 5 years of nothing, and people's hype sort of like died out. And I guess it's important to sort of keep that hype on a higher level and keep the people more involved. But I don't know how involved they're gonna make people in. And it's important to, I guess, just wait and see how it goes.
Yeah, I think it goes both ways. Like what I read about Annan Pulan era, people were so much into it because it was like a really big change after almost like 26-year-old, 28 years old, like later. So I think it goes both ways. Like from the top down, we need to see changes by political elites and the United Nations and this and that. And then people will really begin to believe, because I think people here do not like, with the righteous reasons, they do not trust that much of the secret politicians when it comes to have that solving, like peace atmosphere, I think internally we deep down like kind of think and accept the fact that the solution will be pushed, like will come with the push of international actors also, and people actually are aware of this, and that's kind of why. Because when I talk with my friends, and like they told me like, all the politics is lie, politicians are lie. Okay, that's like probably every people in every country will say that, but here they also say if America wants, or like if EU wants, or if something. So the belief is coming from kind of like outside actors. This is what people that I talk with, like this is what they think.
I don't know how to put my hand up on this app, but yeah, I can just continue on that point. Like, it's obvious why the CBMs are constantly disappointing us. And it's really, with the Greek Cypriot administration, they don't necessarily believe that much will be achieved with CBMs. Like if you notice the statement that Christodoulides got Tufan to sign under the UN's umbrella, it was something like CBMs are useful for facilitating the process, but they're not a replacement to a comprehensive solution. And what the Greek Cypriot government is doing is basically they've got a very different idea of how the process should be compared to the Turkish Cypriot side. The Greek Cypriot side essentially see the next step as the guarantor conference. And at the guarantor conference, they assume Turkey's going to publicly U-turn and negotiations will start. Turkey will throw its undivided support behind negotiations. The Turkish Cypriot side, on the other hand, doesn't want to move to the guarantor conference until they see movement in crossings and in Tufan's 4-point methodology. Now, we're not going to see movement in crossings because the Greek Cypriot side wants to announce new crossings at the conference. And I suspect the reason why that is because they know that they have to make some concessions with regards to opening the crossings because the Turkish army has some objections about some areas and whatever. So it'll be a loss. So basically, they want this conference to be like the Super Bowl, and Turkey will announce negotiations, and they can announce 4 new crossings there as well. And if they have to take any concessions, it'll look so much better after Turkey has announced negotiations. And that's why they're not really paying much attention to Tufan's demands right now. And they've kind of selectively answered them. If you look at the first point, political equality, well, the Greek Cypriots, that same statement they signed, it said that they will negotiate in line with UN resolutions, a solution with political equality. So the Greek Cypriots see that as done, but Tufan rather naughtily slipped in rotating presidency into his political equality demand. And that's something I think the Greek Cypriots are slightly uncomfortable about. They don't necessarily, I don't think Nikos Christodoulides really wants a rotating presidency. Personally, I don't either. So that's how they dealt with point 1. With point 2, respect all current convergences in the Cyprus problem. Again, both sides kind of have a little bit of differences. So the Greek Cypriot side wants the UN to prepare a document and they can sign off whether or not they agree that these are the last convergences. Timeframes is something the Greek Cypriot side I don't think they'll have a problem with. But the last thing, no return to the status quo, that's really troubling them. And we talked about this in the last video, but essentially they say, okay, well, if the Greek side does vote no, then what's going to happen? Tufan's hinting that it might be the 3 Ds, which is direct flights, direct trade, and direct contacts with the EU and other close countries, which the Greek Cypriot side see as a de facto 2-state solution. So I guess my point is, yeah, to bring it back to the thing that we were talking about, which is the CBMs and the last meeting, we're not going to see a lot of movement from in this area because, as I said, the Greek Cypriot side, the Turkish Cypriot side have different expectations of what the next part of the process looks like. And just on a final point, you have to ask yourself, why are the Greek Cypriots so confident that Turkey's going to U-turn at the Guarantor conference? Well, it's because if you read between the lines now, you'll see that the EU has essentially, in the last few months, made several different offers to Turkey through several different channels. Turkey wants to get a lot, Turkey can get a lot economically out of the EU, but right now the Greek Cypriots, for the last few years, they've been vetoing expanded Turkish EU integration. Since 2019, for instance, since the end of Crown Montana, the Greek Cypriots vetoed the Turkey-EU high-level economic dialogue, which must have pissed off the Turks a lot because that means for the last 6 years, they haven't been able to make any movement with the EU with regards to customs union or European Investment Bank investments. And I think it's only in the last few months that the Greek Cypriots actually lifted their veto. And Turkey has now met with the EU twice to talk about expanding its customs union membership. The EU Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, a few months ago, she visited Turkey. She opened 2 new energy projects there, and she hinted Turkey can gain a lot more if it plays ball in Cyprus. So yeah, that's the situation right now. Greek Cypriot side wants a guarantor conference. Turkish Cypriot side wants more progress in the CBMs. Who will win? We don't know. But I have a feeling that there are more things in favor of the Greek Cypriot side. So I wouldn't be surprised if somehow they manage to get a U-turn at the conference, even if they don't answer Tufan's 4 points comprehensively.
Tim, do you want to tell us more about this conference, the Guarantor conference, so that people can learn more about it? Because I don't feel like it's discussed enough. I don't feel like it's usually glossed over, I feel like.
So as Cypriots, you know, and we're in quite a dangerous area. We've got Netanyahu, we've got Erdogan. We're used to a different style of politics in the Middle East, right? It's very loud, assertive. There's lots of grand statements. Occasionally there's lots of violence. But actually the way that the Greek Cypriot government work, they're a very pro-Europe government. Christodoulides himself is a European federalist. It's all very diplomatic. And this is how the EU works. And this is why people don't really feel like there's much happening in the Cyprus problem right now because, you know, they just hear, oh, there's another meeting happening. But this is how the EU solves its problems, through meetings with polite envoys who go to Ankara, they go to Cyprus, and they, you know, they make offers and they're very underreported. But basically, So in the context of the guarantor conference, it'll be a conference. It's called the 5+1 conference, which means the two Cypriot sides will be there. The three guarantor powers will be there under the auspice of the UN. That's the +1. And what the Greek Cypriot side is aiming for is basically probably like a signed statement from all 5 parties that negotiations are going to begin soon in line with UN resolutions, and this will be evidence that Turkey is finally unequivocally supporting Tufan, because right now there's a bit of ambiguity in the relationship between Tufan and Turkey. We don't really know what Turkey's intentions are, but it kind of looks like they're supporting Tufan so far. And so at the guarantor conference, there'll be a lot of pressure. We don't know if there will be an EU representative there yet, and EU doesn't necessarily have a right to be there. This is a 5+1 conference, so it's guarantor powers, Cypriots, and UN. That's kind of how it should be. And Turkey might veto involvement from EU officials. So we don't know if EU officials are going to be there, but we do know that EU officials have already made their offers. So Turkey has some kind of offers in the bag. So then, what are the other participants going to be aiming for? Well, UK says it wants a federal solution. Not many of us believe it's entirely sincere in this, because the solution could mean the end of the sovereign British base areas. But, on paper, they say what they want a solution. So the UK will be diplomatic muscle on our side. So will Greece. And Turkey is being a bit ambiguous right now. It's kind of making statements that sound like two-state solution, but could be read as federation. They want a solution that respects the equality of two states. So at the conference, I think the missing link for the conference to be successful, and this is something that people need to be aware of, is Guterres is retiring December 31st. The Cyprus file is a file that he's very personally involved with, because we had in 2017 the Guterres framework. We came so close to a solution, and at that final dinner that weekend, Guterres made several suggestions, and we collected them and we call them the Guterres framework. And this is a framework that we will use, hopefully, if negotiations start again, for solving the last remaining problems. So I think the Greek Cypriots are right to be optimistic. They have the EU muscle, they have Greece, they have Turkey, and they have the added personal factor from Guterres. Maybe they'll push a breakthrough. But yeah, we don't know, because, Maria Holguin, when she was last on the island, just before she left to go to South America, she said she wants to see more progress in CBMs. Tufan says he wants to see more progress in CBMs. But, I don't know. Basically, we'll see. And the Greek Cypriot side, Nikos, he's hinting that the guarantor conference announcement will come through soon. So I don't know. Basically, there's a possibility that we might see the Greek Cypriots have more power in the situation. We get the guarantor conference, and hopefully Turkey U-turns. But, I think if it happens like that, it'll be kind of sad, because what will it fundamentally mean? It will mean that the Turkish Cypriots are kind of useless actors in this equation. We can protest as much as we like, but if Turkey, the EU, and South Cyprus want a solution, we can't avoid it. 4 proposals or no. So I don't know. It'll be a really interesting next few months, and we got to just watch how these things happen. Hopefully we get that guarantor conference. I might be a bit biased because I live in the South, so I'm partial to Southern propaganda. And I'm kind of supporting the government. I do hope they get a breakthrough. I think secretly we all do.
Yeah. When you mentioned Guterres, I just remembered in this panel I joined, which I'm going to discuss at the end, it was mentioned by the professors there that Guterres wants to make a lasting impact on Cyprus, like before the retirement. So I think he's going to push for it. But I mean, even if it does, it again depends on Turkey, depends on Greece, Republic of Cyprus. I mean, they have the higher hands. So I don't know how much it will affect positively. I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think like that pushes like too hard would?
To be honest, it really depends on how big Erdogan's bride is. And I have a feeling it's very big, and they're not talking about it because these are EU matters. EU are professional diplomats. They do their job quietly. They're not like Middle Eastern leaders. They don't shout about it. But I think that the bribe that could be on the table is very big. I mean, Erdogan is a man who has very close connections with Turkey's defense industry, construction, finance. These are all people who will make a shitload of money if he makes a move in Cyprus and gets a better customs union deal. But you know what is the thing that I think people might overlook here? I think the plot twist is that Turkey might actually respect the will of the Turkish Cypriots here. And, you know, we can say we had 5 years of Tatar, which were absolute emotional hell for all of us. And we never want to see Turkey intervene in our politics on that level ever again, right? But with Tufan's relationship with Turkey, I think it's potentially just as positive as Tatar's relationship was. So what I think is like the Greek Cypriots, they have it in their mind that if we give Erdogan his bribe, then we organize this conference in the summer and we're going to embarrass Turkey and everybody's going to get their cut out of a Cyprus settlement and everything's going to be okay. But what they're not really thinking about is, I honestly think that Ankara has given Tufan absolute freedom in the same way that they gave Tatar absolute freedom. And Tatar, he's a stubborn, bullheaded kind of guy. He used that absolute freedom to the utmost limits. He was saying no to everything. They've given Tufan absolute freedom. And Tufan, being the careful, scholarly kind of guy that he is, he doesn't want another round of talks that end nowhere. And he knows that his community doesn't have a lot of time left. So, you know, I think the biggest embarrassment for the Greek Cypriots is if we get to this guarantor conference, you know, you've got UK, you've got UN, you've got Greece, South Cyprus, all pressuring for federal solution, and Turkey just saying, well, look, the Turkish Cypriots have a concern here. You know, they don't want to return to the status quo. You've just been avoiding this. Like, you've just been avoiding dealing with Tufan's actual propositions. You've just written them off as Turkish demands. But what if they're coming from Tufan himself? You know, and I think that they are. I think Tufan is a very responsible man. I think he's a very careful man. And, you know, it's a little bit insulting to see the Greek Cypriot government just not even really critically engage with his points. So I think if there's going to be embarrassment, you know, we do need a lot of pressure on Turkey to U-turn. But ultimately, this shouldn't be a process between the Greek Cypriots and Turkey. Turkish Cypriots should have a say in their future. And I think, you know, it will be the biggest embarrassment if we get to the guarantor conference, the Greek Cypriots are expecting a positive thing, and Turkey just turns around and says, look, you haven't sorted out the no return to the status quo, the backstop. How can we start a negotiation process if it's just going to be open-ended and, you know, drag on for another 15 years? That's not going to help anybody. So, you know, you are quite right. We're all quite right to have fear, to mostly fear Turkey, because Turkey has proven unreliable through the Tatar years, through colonization policies, whatever. I think it's absolutely right for us to most fear Turkey and Turkey's commitment to this process. But actually, I think we shouldn't let the South off the hook, because the South, they're very good diplomats. They can get us a conference. They can get us EU carrots. They can get us everything. But when it comes to actually talking to Tufan, the elected representative of the other half of the island, they treat him like he doesn't exist. So if they get a disappointment in this summer conference, you know, I would say, and I am a person who has supported the Southern government's handling of the Cyprus problem thus far, but if they don't get a result from this conference, we need to start talking about having no confidence in the Southern government for dealing with the Cyprus problem, because they had all this time. Tufan's been in power for more than 6 months now. You know, they could have seriously deep conversations about substantial CBMs, and, you know, they could open the crossings, they could talk about backstops. But as I said, Greek Cypriot side, they think they can do this another way, top-down approach, EU, Turkey. Let's see how it goes. You know, we're all hopeful for any kind of movement. So, you know.
I mean, yeah, anything.
Yeah.
Selçuk, can you tell us about the speech that Erhürman gave in that hotel very recently?
So that panel thing, it wasn't really about Erhürman. His speech was like mostly 3 to 4 minutes long. He pretty much like brought a conclusion to the whole thing. So this panel was organized by liberal democracy movements in the north part of the island and Europolitica. It was a joint event in a hotel, and they pretty much had no academics that had knowledge in the fields of the whole like Middle East and in general how the stuff that happens in Middle East affects Cyprus and how the secret politics moves along in the process. So, and it was titled Cyprus. I'm just going through my notes here. So it was titled Cyprus in an Era of Regional Turbulence, Middle East Developments and Election Agenda in Republic of Cyprus. Each knowledgeable expert spoke in this topic. Some spoke about the elections. It was mostly towards the end, and most of the stuff discussed is, as I said, how the latest stuff in the Middle East is going to affect the direction our island takes. So Professor Ahmet Sözen started by pretty much saying that the world, the general world order, the liberal world order is dissolving in a way, and the international system we have is transitioning into different structures. So I think from what I understood, it's mostly about being decentralized. He made notes about the tensions the big world countries have with each others. So the tension with United States, China, as well as the tension United States has with Russia, and how it shapes global politics. And he concluded by saying the energy problem in the world has become the big thing that we need to stay wary of. And this energy topic comes a lot in this discussion. And he also noted that Cyprus issue is pretty much on the backstage when we look at the stuff the world goes through. And although this issue we have is in the backstage, Cyprus still has a geopolitical importance. So when the world leaders look towards Middle East, look towards the energy problem, they eventually land on Cyprus, and Cyprus eventually finds itself as an island at the center of it all. Then we move into the next experts. I'm going to try to go through faster, actually. So Miss Nur Köprülü said that after the Assad regime fell, things were not the same anymore. And she also noted that the world sort of split into different sections after October 7, 2023. So after this stuff, after Israel and Palestine conflict really flared up and stuff. And then Mete Hatay mentioned about the insecurity Cyprus has found itself in, the insecurity the politicians in Cyprus have, and even maybe the public has. And with the approaching elections, and with Cyprus being in leading the European Union for this period in the year, Cyprus problem is now more on the surface instead of being at the backstage for most of the time. And so the panel split into two here. So after they pretty much concluded their Middle East discussion here and how the Middle East affects Cyprus, and then the remaining half, mostly the remaining 40% of the discussion, was about the elections and how the main political parties in Republic of Cyprus are sort of losing their influence. And other new parties, as you guys know, FDS has this party called Direct Democracy, I think is the English translation. And he is gaining attention, especially by the young people. And Akel is losing votes along with DC. There's rise in Elam's vote as well. So in the upcoming parliament, apparently they expect the discusser was that said this was Nikos Christodoulides. He mentioned that like he expects LM to have higher votes, and the parliament seats are pretty much going to be shared with different. I mean, like instead of AKEL and DC, we're probably going to see more of the other parties having seats. So yeah, this is as quickly as I could go through all of it. I would like to go much deeper in this, but maybe some other time.
All right, guys. We have a question which is asked by many commentators, many watchers, and many important YouTube channels, let's say, which is, does the people of Cyprus from both sides really have the will for a solution? Does the Cypriot people, do they want it? Do they really want it? That's a question that we get. I know it's a really basic question, but people who are not from Cyprus, they are really wondering.
I think
I
that
just want to revolve around that.
that'll probably
But
be a
if we
good
have 1
topic.
minute,
That'll probably
yeah.
be a good topic for another video, but I think
Yes,
I'll close it off now. I'll thank you.
exactly.
Thank you, Tim Selçukberk. I think Tim made some really good points in summary on how Greek Cypriot government perhaps is very cynical, how Turkish Cypriot leadership perhaps is bypassed in the situation, and how Turkey will react diplomatically. Very interesting points. I am going to finish this off now, guys. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for watching, and that's all. Gonna say your advice? Yeah, that's all. Okay, cool.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. See you guys. Bye-bye.